Welcome to Module 7, English 241, students. First, we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do this week, and then we'll jump into the lecture on the readings, okay? So, welcome to Module 7, which means two important things. First, this is our next to last module of the semester. And second, everything you do this week is helping you to get ready for this final multimodal project. This week's readings include Shakespeare's The Tempest and then several other poems by John Donne. As you read, focus less on trying to figure everything out right away and more on noticing how these texts talk about power, language, love, and also connection. Also, as a quick reminder, don't be afraid to use outside resources to help you understand the language. It's not wrong to do that. Online study guides, summaries, glosses, and explanatory videos are completely fine to use to help you understand the text. They're challenging, and using support tools as being a smart reader. That's part of it. Just make sure that your writing and your reflections are yours and not those that you're taking from summaries. Here's what you need to do this week. First, do the readings and review the additional module resources, the AMRs. Make sure you take notes on moments that stand out to you, especially anything that feels like confusing, surprising, or even relatable. Next, the multimodal final project is officially assigned this week. Read those instructions carefully. That project replaces a traditional final exam. I don't do that, and I focus on your reflection and also your growth. You're also going to complete the project planning checkpoint, where you'll select some passages from your major writing assignments 1 and 2. And then you're going to submit preliminary reflection notes or an outline on that final presentation. So this week, you're just going to submit the notes and the outline, or the outline and the passages that you'll read. There are rules for those passages. Make sure you check that out. Okay. You'll participate in the discussion board, focusing on the Tempest and or on Donne. Sorry, I changed that. The discussion board is going to be about your final presentation. Initial posts are again due by Wednesday, and replies are going to be due by Sunday. As always, maximum effort is what matters the most. Not going to be any video journal posts this week. Make sure you use that extra time to read, to think, and to plan that final project. Remember, you're almost there. Keep going. Remember to ask questions when you need help, and don't hesitate to reach out to me. Grading is ongoing. Make sure you're looking at the feedback that I'm presenting to you as I give it to you, okay? Now we'll move to the Module 7 lecture, which is Power, Language, and Connection in the Tempest, and then also John Donne's poetry. Module 7 brings together two writers that you might recognize by name. I hope you recognize Shakespeare and also John Donne. But this week is less about memorizing who they are and more about understanding what they're asking us to think about. This is one of the most reflective modules in the course. Instead of focusing on heroes and battles or public reputation, these texts all zoom in on power, language, and relationships, both in public life and in also private moments. So let's start with The Tempest. On the surface, The Tempest looks like a story about magic, revenge, and payback. Prospero has been betrayed. He's been kicked out of his position as Duke of Milan and has been stranded on an island with his daughter. Using magic and knowledge, he causes a shipwreck to bring his enemies to the island. That setup might sound like the beginning of a typical revenge story, but Shakespeare does something unexpected. Instead of ending with punishment or violence, the play moves toward forgiveness and letting go of power. Prospero's power doesn't come from physical strength or weapons. It comes from books and education and language. He controls the island through what he knows. He controls Ariel by promising Ariel freedom. He controls Caliban by teaching him language and then using that language against him. This raises an important question. Is control through intelligence and education more ethical than control through force? The play also connects to ideas about colonization, which means taking control of land and people that are already there. England was starting to explore and expand during Shakespeare's time, and The Tempest reflects those concerns. Caliban is native to the island, but Prospero claims authority because he brings civilization to him. Shakespeare does not give us a clear answer about who's right here. Prospero brings order, but he also causes resentment and suffering. The play pushes us to sit with that discomfort. The most important moment in The Tempest is the ending. Prospero chooses forgiveness and gives up his magic. This is huge. Shakespeare suggests that real wisdom is not about controlling everything, but about knowing when to stop controlling. Power without restraint can harm everyone involved, including the person in charge. Now, let's shift to John Donne, who brings these ideas into personal relationships. John Donne was a poet writing in the early 1600s, and his poetry can feel strange at first because it does not sound like traditional love poetry. Donne is part of that, what scholars call metaphysical poetry, which just means poetry that mixes emotions with thinking. His poems don't just describe feelings, they argue, they persuade, they use logic, they use clever comparisons and unexpected metaphors. They use these things to make points about love and also connections. In The Flea, Donne uses a tiny insect as a part of an argument about intimacy. It sounds weird, and it is, but that's the point. Donne's showing how language and reasoning can be used to pressure someone else. The poem is funny, clever, and uncomfortable all at once. It reminds us that words can be powerful tools. The Good Morrow takes a very different approach. In this poem, love becomes its own world. The speaker suggests that shared experience matters more than exploration, more than ambition, or even status. Love replaces the desire for or conquest. Sorry, the love replaces the desire for like conquest or fame. This is a big shift from earlier literature that celebrates public achievement. Song, Sweetest Love, I Do Not Go, deals with separation, but without panic or without sadness. The speaker insists that real love does not fall apart just because two people are apart physically. This challenges the idea that love must always be dramatic or painful. Finally, A Valediction Forbidding Mourning, probably his most famous poem, uses the image of a compass, like the kind used in math or geometry class, where one leg stays planted while the other one moves, but they're still connected. Donne uses this image to show that love can stretch without breaking. Distance does not weaken it, it only proves its strength. When you read The Tempest and Donne together, you start to see a pattern. Both Shakespeare and Donne are really interested in how language creates power and connection. Prospero controls others through speech and knowledge. Donne's speakers shape relationship through argument and metaphor. In both cases, words do matter. The seventh module connects directly to your final multimodal project. These texts are not about clear answers, they're about making better questions. What does responsible power look like? What does honest love look like? When does control become harmful? As you read, pay attention to who speaks, who listens, and who resists. That's going to help you see how public authority in The Tempest connects to private relationships in Donne's poetry. Module 7 is about growing up, both in literature and in thinking. It shows British literature questioning power instead of celebrating it, and redefining connection as something built on trust, balance, and also self-awareness. That makes it a perfect lead-in to the final reflection of the course, which is what you're going to do for your final presentation, the multimodal presentation. All right, that's the lecture this week. That's all I have for you. If you got any questions, please don't be afraid to reach out to me to ask those questions. Again, I want you to be successful, and I'm hoping that you will be throughout the rest of the semester. All right, have a good week.